Hi guys, today we are going to find out what if the whispers of heresy never silenced the groundbreaking voice of Galileo Galilei. Imagine a sun-drenched Italian courtyard, not with the ominous shadow of the Inquisition, but with scholars eagerly debating new astronomical observations, their faces alight with discovery. You might picture Galileo, not in quiet despair, but at a grand university lectern, his every pronouncement met with enthusiastic nods, not fearful glances. You probably won't survive this historical deviation unscathed, your understanding of progress about to be delightfully shattered. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Let me know where you're tuning in from and what local time it is for you right now, down in the comments below. Now sit back and let's dive into today's alternate journey together. You stand on the threshold of the 17th century, a pivotal moment where the church's authority clashes with empirical evidence. But this time, the outcome shifts dramatically. Instead of condemnation, Galileo's arguments for a heliocentric universe are met with a surprising open-mindedness, perhaps influenced by a more pragmatic pope or a less entrenched theological establishment. The very fabric of European thought begins to reweave itself, not with threads of fear and dogma, but with the bold, bright fibers of reason and observation. You witness an era where intellectual curiosity is not just tolerated, but actively encouraged, fundamentally altering the course of scientific inquiry. This new intellectual climate, unburdened by the fear of ecclesiastical reprisal, means Galileo's telescopic observations are not just accepted, but eagerly replicated and extended by astronomers across the continent. You see makeshift observatories pop up in unexpected places: monastery courtyards, noble estates, even humble rooftops, as everyone clamors to witness Jupiter's moons dancing or Venus's phases mimicking Earth's own. The printing presses, instead of churning out theological tracts denouncing new science, are now working overtime, disseminating Galileo's findings and subsequent discoveries at an unprecedented rate. It's like the internet, but with more parchment and less cat videos, though you can bet someone still tried to draw a cat on a celestial chart. This rapid exchange of information fosters an environment of collaborative discovery where scientists build upon each other's work almost instantaneously. Imagine bright young minds, not just in Italy but in France, England, and the nascent German states, picking up the torch where Galileo left off, refining instruments and expanding theoretical models. The sheer volume of data, combined with intellectual freedom, leads to a much faster refinement of the heliocentric model, solidifying its place as the accepted cosmological truth decades ahead of our timeline. You might even spot Isaac Newton, born just a few years later than in our history, starting his work on gravity with a fully established heliocentric framework, skipping years of foundational debate. This shift isn't just academic, it ripples through society, changing how people perceive their place in the universe and, subtly, how they question established norms. With theoretical astronomy flourishing, the practical applications of scientific understanding aren't far behind. You witness an explosion of innovation in optics, as the demand for better telescopes drives glassmakers and lens grinders to unprecedented levels of precision. It's not just for stargazing. These improved lenses quickly find their way into microscopes, revealing the unseen world of microbes decades earlier than our history. Imagine a physician in a 17th century bustling city market, not just guessing at causes of illness, but peering through a crude yet functional microscope, seeing tiny animalcules in stagnant water. This early understanding of microbiology, even if rudimentary, could drastically alter public health practices, leading to earlier sanitation efforts and perhaps even crude forms of germ theory. Beyond optics, the mechanical arts also experience a boom. Precision clockwork, initially developed for astronomical calculations, becomes refined for navigation, leading to more accurate timekeeping at sea. This is like going from a sundial to a smartwatch overnight, revolutionizing how ships chart their courses and greatly reducing shipwrecks. You see intricate gear systems and improved metallurgy, born from scientific principles, appearing in everything from more efficient water pumps to early industrial machinery. The trickle-down effect means a general uplift in manufacturing capabilities and a noticeable improvement in everyday tools and conveniences, transforming the lived experience for many. This wave of technological advancement creates a fertile ground for new philosophical thought, pushing society toward an earlier age of enlightenment. You see thinkers like René Descartes and Francis Bacon, rather than struggling against prevailing dogma, finding their empirical and rational methodologies embraced and even funded. The emphasis shifts from scholastic interpretation of ancient texts to direct observation and experimentation, a truly seismic intellectual shift. It's like the scientific method becomes the new rock and roll. Everyone wants to be a part of it, even if they don't quite understand all the lyrics. Universities, once bastions of traditional theology, now eagerly establish chairs in experimental philosophy and natural science, attracting the brightest minds from across Europe. Debates rage not about whether the Earth moves, but about the very nature of light, the principles of motion, and the composition of matter, accelerating the pace of discovery. This intellectual freedom spills over into political and social spheres. If the heavens operate by predictable, discoverable laws, then why shouldn't human societies? You notice early stirrings of ideas about natural rights and governmental reform emerging decades ahead of our historical timeline, rooted in this new scientific rationalism. The notion of a divinely ordained hierarchy begins to subtly erode, replaced by a growing belief in humanity's capacity for reason and self-governance. Perhaps the most striking deviation from our timeline is the Church's response to this burgeoning scientific movement. Instead of fear and suppression, a more forward-thinking faction within the Vatican, perhaps spurred by earlier scientific triumphs, recognizes the potential benefits of embracing intellectual inquiry. You observe cardinals and bishops attending lectures on astronomy, not to condemn, but to understand, even commissioning artists to depict the new celestial models in church frescoes. It's almost as if they realized science wasn't trying to steal God's thunder, but rather illuminate the grandeur of his creation, a cosmic rebrand, if you will. The papacy itself becomes a patron of the sciences, establishing academies not just for theological study but for physics, mathematics, and astronomy, much like ancient Alexandria. Imagine the Vatican Observatory, not as a later concession, but as a vibrant hub of cutting-edge research from the mid-17th century onwards, equipped with the finest telescopes and staffed by brilliant minds. This shift in patronage means immense resources are poured into scientific endeavors, accelerating progress exponentially. You might see the Pope himself reviewing astronomical charts, genuinely fascinated by the latest discoveries of distant nebulae or the intricacies of planetary motion. This intertwined relationship between faith and reason avoids centuries of conflict, presenting a united front for intellectual advancement that profoundly shapes European culture. The very perception of knowledge changes. It is no longer something to be guarded and dogmatically asserted, but something to be relentlessly pursued and openly shared. This scientific and philosophical awakening fuels a renewed age of exploration, not just across oceans but into the very fabric of the natural world. You see ships setting sail, equipped with vastly superior navigational instruments, their captains trusting precise chronometers and accurate star charts to guide them across uncharted waters. This earlier mastery of navigation drastically reduces travel times and risks, opening up new trade routes and enabling more frequent, safer voyages. It's like discovering Google Maps for the 17th century. No more getting lost in the Sargasso Sea while trying to find India. Beyond geographical exploration, this era sees a surge in scientific expeditions. Naturalists, equipped with improved microscopes and botanical presses, venture into new lands, meticulously cataloging flora and fauna with unprecedented detail. Geologists, armed with emerging principles of stratigraphy, begin to decipher the Earth's ancient history, challenging long-held biblical timelines decades sooner. This meticulous collection of data from around the globe feeds back into the scientific community, enriching fields like biology, geology, and anthropology. You observe a world rapidly shrinking, not through conquest, but through understanding, as diverse cultures and ecosystems are documented and studied. The global exchange of knowledge accelerates, leading to cross-cultural scientific collaborations that further propel human understanding. The cascade of scientific progress inevitably reaches the realm of medicine, bringing about an earlier, more profound revolution in healthcare. With microscopes revealing microorganisms, the ancient miasma theory of disease begins to falter, replaced by a nascent understanding of germ theory much earlier than in our history. You witness physicians, no longer solely relying on humors and astrological charts, start advocating for cleaner surgical instruments and rudimentary sanitation practices in hospitals. It's not quite modern surgery, but it's a huge leap from just rub some leeches on it, you'll be fine, to maybe we should wash our hands before slicing people open. Anatomy becomes a more rigorous science, as detailed observations are made without the shadow of theological prohibitions. This leads to a deeper understanding of the circulatory system, nervous system, and organ functions, paving the way for advanced surgical techniques and targeted treatments. Furthermore, the systematic application of the scientific method to botanical studies yields a rapid expansion in pharmacopoeia, identifying and categorizing medicinal plants with greater accuracy. You see early clinical trials, albeit informal ones, testing the efficacy of various remedies, separating genuine cures from folk superstition decades before our timeline. Child mortality rates begin to slowly decline, and major epidemics, while still devastating, are somewhat mitigated by earlier, more informed public health responses. The overall quality of life, at least concerning health and longevity, starts to improve measurably in this alternate 17th and 18th century. This early emphasis on scientific inquiry and empirical evidence doesn't stop at the academic or medical elite. It filters down into general society, fostering widespread education. You notice a growing demand for public lectures and popular science books, often written in vernacular languages rather than Latin, making complex ideas accessible to a broader audience. It's like the 17th century equivalent of YouTube explainers, minus the incessant sponsorship reads. Though, let's be honest, someone probably tried to hawk a better abacus. Schools and academies, encouraged by both state and church, begin to incorporate natural philosophy and mathematics into their curricula for all students, not just future clergy or nobles. You see children in classrooms learning about planetary motion with simple models, or experimenting with rudimentary physics principles, their young minds sparking with curiosity. This widespread scientific literacy fosters a populace that is more accustomed to critical thinking and less prone to superstition or demagoguery. Debates on public policy become increasingly informed by data and logical reasoning, rather than purely by tradition or religious doctrine. The scientific method, once the domain of a select few, becomes a cultural cornerstone, influencing decision-making in everything from agriculture to urban planning. You might even find local councils debating optimal crop rotation based on scientific understanding of soil, rather than just what Grandpappy always did. This creates a society that is not only more innovative but also more resilient and adaptable, better equipped to face challenges with reason and collective effort. This environment of open inquiry and collaboration doesn't just foster internal growth, it creates a truly international scientific front. You see learned societies like the Royal Society in London and the French Academy of Sciences, forming decades earlier and with far more collaborative spirit, openly sharing discoveries across national borders. This is like a global scientific WhatsApp group, but instead of sharing memes, they're sharing groundbreaking theories and experimental results. Rivalries still exist, of course, but they are intellectual contests, pushing boundaries rather than secretive hoarding of knowledge. Scientists from different nations frequently correspond, travel to each other's labs, and even jointly publish findings, accelerating the peer review process and validating discoveries much faster. Imagine a young physicist from Prussia exchanging letters with an Italian astronomer, or an English physician visiting a Dutch anatomist to observe new dissection techniques. Funding for these international endeavors comes not just from royal patrons, but increasingly from private benefactors and even early forms of public subscription, demonstrating widespread societal value. This cross-pollination of ideas and methods prevents the intellectual isolation that sometimes plagued individual thinkers in our timeline. You observe a collective human intellect, unhindered by dogma or unnecessary nationalistic barriers, focusing its energy on understanding the universe. The cumulative effect is an exponential acceleration of scientific progress, laying robust foundations for future breakthroughs across all disciplines. With such an accelerated pace of scientific and technological development, humanity's gaze naturally turns upward, toward the cosmos. You find the late 18th century, rather than being on the cusp of industrial revolution, is instead experiencing the very earliest stirrings of what we might call a space age. Think hot air balloons not just for novelties, but for atmospheric research, collecting data that fuels theories of aerodynamics and propulsion decades ahead of our timeline. It's like the Wright brothers are born into a world that already has a solid understanding of how things fly, giving them a monumental head start. While rocketry is still rudimentary, the theoretical groundwork for space travel is being meticulously laid by brilliant minds, building on the unbroken legacy of Galileo and Newton. Telescopes continue to improve exponentially, allowing for the mapping of lunar features with unprecedented clarity and even the earliest fuzzy observations of exoplanets by the mid-19th century. You witness discussions in scientific societies not just about lunar exploration, but about the possibility of life beyond Earth, based on actual astronomical data rather than pure speculation. The collective human imagination is captured by the stars, fostering a sense of shared purpose and wonder that transcends national boundaries. This shift in focus unites humanity under a common scientific frontier, minimizing conflicts and redirecting resources toward ambitious celestial endeavors. By the dawn of the 20th century, this alternate world is not preparing for two world wars, but for its first tentative steps beyond Earth's atmosphere, driven by centuries of unfettered inquiry. As the dust settles on this reimagined past, you're left to ponder a world fundamentally reshaped by intellectual freedom. The vibrant tapestry of history, once woven with threads of conflict between faith and reason, now gleams with a unified pursuit of knowledge. Imagine the countless lives saved, the suffering averted, the innovations born decades, even centuries, ahead of our own painful timeline. It's a powerful reminder that the path not taken can be just as impactful as the one we know. In this alternate reality, humanity's journey to the stars began not with a frantic race against geopolitical rivals, but with a collective, hopeful gaze upwards, a shared dream of discovery. This world, where science and faith found harmony, demonstrates the extraordinary potential unleashed when curiosity is celebrated, not suppressed. So, what do you think? If Galileo never faced the Inquisition, what other profound changes do you imagine would ripple through history?